Okay, we've been in a series. We've been working through the Sermon on the Mount. It's Jesus' kingdom message in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And we have been looking at his central theme, which is this, is repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And we've named the series Hark, Herald, Hallow because this is what Jesus is doing. He is announcing the good news of his kingdom and everything that comes with it. And it's his most famous message. There's parts of this that each of us know. In fact, there's a group of us that are committing this to memory in this season and working on just committing this to heart. And we've been working through it. And as we go through it, there's even like familiarity to me as I come back to it. You know, I have it in pieces and I'm like, oh, that is in there, you know? And then there's other parables you're like, okay, no, that was taught over here. But it's really cool as we've been doing this, just watching the flow of thought as Jesus, he begins with the Beatitudes. We talked about the salt and light passage. The last few weeks we've been in a study on the theme of righteousness. Someone say righteousness. So we've been talking about righteousness, that righteousness is to do what is right by God and by others. And we entered into this in the section when Jesus talks about the Torah. He says, don't suppose that I've come to do away with the Torah and the prophets. I've not come to do away with them, but to fulfill them full. So I tell you, unless you're doing what is right, far surpasses the scribes and the Pharisees, you won't be entering into the kingdom of the skies. So he ends that passage there with, unless you're doing what is right, far surpasses. And then what he continues into that we've been studying the last several weeks is what does righteousness look like? What are these aspects of this greater righteousness that Jesus is talking about? And so we've talked about anger, we've talked about sexual desire, marriage and divorce, and this week we're going to be talking about vows. And so I think I got a slide for this. I wanted to just summarize really concisely the last few set of messages into this theme of righteousness that we've been talking about. And so Jesus teaches this, that to live righteously, we do this and live righteously by controlling our anger. Controlling our anger. We live righteously by not, capital not, participating in or entertaining wrongful sexual desire. We live righteously by remaining faithful to our spouse. We talked about that last week with the subject of divorce and with marriage. And so today, we're going to move on to the subject of righteousness that brings us to vows. And I need to move on from the the subject of marriage, but I want to just quickly, there's this crossover here that I just want to give a quick glance to. When we talk about vows, the way you and I relate to marriage is still very traditional. And it is, when we talk about vows, probably one of the most preserved ancient practice of vows that you and I can relate to today in our experience with that context of marriage. And so when Jesus, he talked about divorce, as we studied last week, not only is it a reprehensible offense because of sexual immorality, and we went into an extensive teaching over 3 weeks on this, but it also is reprehensible because of the vows that you and I enter into before God. And we're going to kind of open that up today as we talk about this. But there's more than just one layer. It's not just sexual purity and faithfulness within the context of marriage, but it's you personally made a vow before God entering into this union with this other. And so not only do you have the subject of sexual immorality that's at play, but you also have what we're moving into in the subject today, which is this commitment of oaths and of vows. So we're going to get into it and talk about it. So getting into the matters that Jesus, he calls us to this greater righteousness in his teaching. None of these, as we've talked about, are careless matters, but they are all weighty and of great importance. So the way that you deal with your anger, where a lot of us would just be like, well, so what? You know, people get angry all the time. There's lots of justifications for anger. Jesus doesn't see it that way. He says your anger is a problem. Your anger is something that you need to deal with if you're going to live righteously, how you relate to it and how you control it. Same thing with sexual desire. It's not just a careless matter, but it's we talked about the holiness in the design of that and marriage. And today, as we study vows, again, this isn't something that's careless, but Jesus emphasizes it here. Jesus could have emphasized anything. And there's these 6 subject matters, these 6 case studies on righteousness that he goes. And we're on number 3 this week as we jump into Matthew chapter 5, 33 through 37. So here it is. Jesus says, "Again, you have heard that it was said to the ancients, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' And I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, not by the sky because it is God's throne, not by the land because it is his footstool, and not by Jerusalem because it is the city of the great king. And do not swear even by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black, but let your word be yes, yes, or no, no, for anything beyond this comes from the evil one." So I'm going to give you a main point this morning. I do this often, and this is probably more important than ever today as I'm rushing through this one. So if I miss anything, this is what needs to go home with you today, is that to live righteously, we live righteously by keeping our promises and not making promises that we can't keep. There's a slide for that. Live righteously by keeping your promises and not making promises that you can't keep. So I want to kind of open this up and undercover like what's going on. We've talked about context is really important. How were people relating to this in Jesus' day, that it was such a important emphasis that Jesus came and presented a teaching on this. And so what's going on with this practice of swearing oaths and committing vows? And again, as I've mentioned throughout the series, the Bible Project has some really great podcast resources, things to check out here that I'd invite you to do. But oaths and vows were an ancient practice of bringing God into human affairs. And so this wasn't always a wrongful thing. There is a rightful way and a reason why you might enter into a vow before God or an oath before the Lord. So, I know in the passage we read, and we're teaching through it this morning, Jesus says, don't swear an oath at all. Well, he's not saying there's never in any instance a reason to swear an oath. There are in some cases, and again, marriage being like a prime example of this, where an oath before the Lord is a holy and sacred and proper thing. But the problem is, in Jesus' day, this kind of became the ancient version of crossing your fingers behind your back. And so people would swear oaths that they didn't intend to keep. But the problem with that is they're attaching the Lord's name and the Lord's character to it, and then just carelessly throwing out these empty promises. In fact, it's really common, and you don't have to open up your Old Testament very much to see how common it was for people to make oaths and to swear oaths and to have vows. We just, in our Bible reading this week at home, we stumbled upon 1 Samuel chapter 20, and Jonathan and David make a solemn pact before the Lord together. So if you think of it today, the way we'd say is like, I'm going to make a promise to you, but, I'm going to cross my fingers behind my back, which we know just means it's a loophole, right? It means, well, I didn't really mean it. I don't have to keep it. So there's a song lyric. I like to remind you guys, I listen to punk rock every so often. There's a song lyric of a band that I listen to, and they have this line in the song that says, just let me cross my fingers behind my back, and then I will swear to you anything you want me to after that. If I can do that first, then I'll make any promise in the world. I just think it's a tongue-in-cheek, really funny line. So what Jesus is doing here, again, is these "you have heard it said" statements. So it's not like Jesus is presenting new information they haven't heard before. There's 3 Old Testament references within the law, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, and Jesus is summarizing these 3 verses, these 3 laws and commandments into this teaching that he presents to us in Matthew chapter 5. So the first one is this. It's Leviticus 19, verse 12. And it says, "Do not bring shame on the name of the Lord your God by using his name, to swear falsely. for I am the Lord. Deuteronomy chapter 23, 21 through 23 says, when you make a vow to the Lord your God, be prompt in fulfilling whatever you have promised to him. For the Lord your God demands that you promptly fulfill all your vows, or you will be guilty of sin. However, it is not a sin to refrain from making a vow. In other words, no one's making you do this. This is a choice that you're making before God and before someone else, an individual, to swear this. God's not commanding that you swear it, but if you swear it, then here's the parameters. He says, once you have voluntarily made a vow, be careful to fulfill your promise to the Lord your God. Numbers 20, verse 2 says, a man who makes a vow before the Lord or makes a pledge under oath must never break it. You guys know what the word never means? That's right, it means never. He must do exactly what he said he would do. So again, oath making and swearing was this ancient practice of bringing God into human affairs and thereby inviting the judgment of God upon the one who fails to fulfill his oath. And that might feel weighty and be like, ooh, but again, you don't have to do this. This wasn't a command before the Lord that you will swear these oaths. This is a human-made invention that we men started using the name of God to swear things to one another. And God says, look, if you're going to use my name, you better be quick to fulfill that vow. You better fulfill the oath that you've made, fulfill the pledge that you've made. So in 2013, there's this song that was released by Miley Cyrus called We Can't Stop. It's a terrible song, 10 out of 10, don't recommend it. But I worked at a car wash, and it was popular on the radio at the time, so it would play throughout the day as I'm drying cars. And there's this line. It's a really terrible, debaucherous song. It's about being wild and youthful and doing whatever you want and just who cares, and you only live once. It's my life. Let me live it. And I'm just gonna chart my own path and use that as an excuse to do all these terrible things. So in the middle of that, she has this line in the song that's really prominent, and she says, "Remember that only God can judge us." And later. When the song was popular, I saw this meme, and it's quite funny if you've watched The Princess Bride. Show of hands if you've seen The Princess Bride before. Okay, not enough of you have seen The Princess Bride. It's from like the 80s, I think. You need to go watch it, okay? So I've seen it, and it was well before I was born, okay? So classic film, must see. The song up top, don't bother looking it up, okay? But the movie below, you need to see that movie, okay? So there's this really intelligent guy, and Inigo Montoya is the guy talking there. He says, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. So she's got this line, well, only God can judge me. And it's like, you realize what you're saying when you say that. You know what I'm saying? I can tell the picture's offending some of you guys, so we can go to the next slide, whatever it is. So Ecclesiastes 5, 4 through 7 says, when you make a promise to God, do not delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. Keep all, again, you guys know what the word all means, the promises you make to him. For it is better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Do not let your mouth, someone point to the person next to you, say, your mouth. Do not let your mouth make you sin. And don't defend yourself by telling the temple messenger that the promise you made was a mistake. I have my fingers crossed behind my back. That would make God angry, and he might wipe out everything that you have achieved. For talk is cheap, like daydreams and other useless activities. Fear God instead. So in later practice, and the Bible Project helped me figure this out. I didn't have the foreknowledge of this, but there's a time in which you guys have probably heard teachings on the name of God, Yahweh, in Hebrew culture. So there's these oaths and these vows that are being sworn before God. But later on in Hebrew practice, they became very reverent of the actual name of God being spoken out loud. And so it became a taboo, like we're not going to say that, we're not going to speak it out of reverence for the Lord. So if I can't swear by the name of the Lord, then what do I swear by? And basically people just begin to swear by everything else, God adjacent things. And so they would curtail swearing by God and start swearing by other holy things that are adjacent to God. So for example, one might swear by the temple. Or, today you've probably heard someone say, I swear on the Bible, right? It's like, I'm not swearing by God, I'm swearing on something holy, something of great importance, of great value. And they were intentionally doing this to preserve the name of God. I'm not going to use that, but I am going to swear by something near and dear and holy to the heart of God. And this is what was happening in Jesus' day, and it was often and it was common. And so this is where Jesus breaks in his teaching, and he says this, do not swear an oath at all. And then he gets specific, and he says, not by the sky, because it is God's throne. Not by the land, because it is his footstool. Not by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. And then, just in case there's a contention, well, what if I swear by me? I swear on my head. And Jesus is not even by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. In other words, everything in all of creation belongs to me. So don't swear upon things that belong rightfully to me, are not yours to swear by. They are mine, my possession. You are not even your own possession, for you belong to me. So do not swear by your head. And I love it because, sometimes we read ancient stuff and we're like, oh, those guys, good thing we're 21st century now and we've got it figured out, right? But we're so bad at doing the same thing. And, I could ask you this morning, and if you were honest, to just, be transparent this morning, how many of you guys have ever promised something that in speaking it from your mouth, before the words even came out, you knew you weren't going to do it? You knew you weren't going to fulfill it. Yeah, okay, there's a few honest people in the room. The rest of you are not honest people this morning. At some point in our life, we've all done it where we've carelessly spoken. And we say things that we don't mean. And so to live righteously is to keep your promises and to not make promises that you can't keep. Let me see if I'm working through this. So, the other major thing we kind of touched on a little bit here, but the problem with these oaths is that they're connecting them to the name of God. They're connecting them to the character of God. And Jesus says, even things that you want to swear outside of me, those things technically belong to me. So don't swear by them. And so the risk of offense here is that we're taking the weight and the character of God and attaching it to our words, which if left unfulfilled, taint and disgrace the character of God. And that's why it matters so much to God, and it matters so much that Jesus emphasizes it in this teaching. So I'm going to share a very adult example this morning. So if you're under the age of 20, this might not compute. But Bryson where's Bailey is up there, and Bella, you just hang on to this information for later in life, okay? But I want to talk about credit scores because I think it is a really good relation to what we're talking about here. So if you're an adult over the age of 20, you have a good understanding and relationship with the credit score. And credit scores can work for you or they can work against you. And so the thing with credit scores is they have a history, and it takes a long time to build them up, to make them. And in one instance, you can make a tiny little mistake, and it can wreck your credit score and take you years to fix that, right? Even though maybe I have 5 years, 10 years of on-time payments and lengthy accounts that I've kept up on, and I haven't been delinquent on anything. And then I can make, one failed payment, or you know what I'm saying, right? And it can damage that score for years to come. My family had this in California. We were in an unfortunate time of the housing market collapse, and we had to move from California to Washington. My parents had purchased this house, and when the housing market crashed. The home didn't have any value. So they had to short sell the home. It wrecked our credit score. It damaged our ability to purchase new homes, right? Because lenders look at this history of your reputation on the line and make judgments of if you can be trusted or not. Grady had a really funny story. We, in our ordination process to become ministers with the Assemblies of God, they actually run a lot of these financial checks on you because they're like, you have no business managing church finances and talking to other people about money if you don't have your own stuff in order. And so Grady was like flying with really high colors, looking really great. And then they flagged him and they're like, oh, your credit, we're just really nervous about this thing that came up on your report. And Grady was all like panicky. He's like, I check my credit score all the time. He's like, I'm on time payments. Like, I'm good with this. And it ended up being on this really like more extensive report that they ran that not like a normal company would run. There was this delinquent account for Verizon that I guess his mom opened under his name when he was like 13 or something. And I guess the account got closed, but they never officially closed the account. And so it's just got this like history that was like sitting on him. And I mean, praise God that it was discovered and he got it cleared up and fixed or whatever. But you get how that works, okay? So now just a real quick crossover, and then we'll get back to the scriptures because I think this is where it is really helpful of how this comes into play. So Lindsay and I were at a time where we had this crazy little Ford Focus. It was a beater car, and we drove on this trip, and we got stranded like 3 hours away from home. The engine burned out, and we no longer had a car. And I mean, we were like a year into our marriage at this point. We didn't make a lot of money. We don't have stuff in the bank account. We're like, how are we going to get another car? Like, we have jobs. We're responsible people. Like, we need a car. And so we kind of came to the conclusion that, like, if we're going to get a car, like, we need to borrow money to get this car. Apologize to Dave Ramsey this morning, okay? But at the time, it was like we had close friendships and relationships. It's like no one could lend us an amount. What were we going to do? And so we found this car. We were smart about it. We found an affordable car for like $5,000 that was really reliable. We weren't going and buying Ferraris, got a little Pontiac. And we went to go get a loan for this car. And at the time, they wouldn't lend us the car because we didn't have a credit history. It wasn't that we had a bad credit report. We just didn't have a credit. There was no history. And the bank said, well, because we don't have a history, we don't have a reputation to trust by you, you're going to need to get a cosigner. Some of you guys know these terms, right? And so my dad actually co-signed on this loan, and it's what got us our jump start into adult life. Now today, in a much better spot because of it. But before we get our foot in the door, we had to have someone else's name backed up on the loan who they had a good reputation that could vouch for us on the loan. And what a cosigner does is if the initiator of the loan, which would have been us, fails to upend their end of the bargain, then the responsibility falls onto the cosigner to cover for you. Okay, so you see where I'm going with vows now. What we're doing in swearing vows and swearing oath and bringing God into human affairs is we're making God the cosigner on our vow and our oath, and who knows what that might be. And we're placing him as the responsible party on our behalf for weightier means. And worse than that is we're not asking God if he can be cosigner on this vow or this oath. We are fraudulently co-signing God onto agreements that God never agreed to. And you can see why this is offensive, right? If someone was to go co-sign your name onto a loan document tomorrow and you had no recognition of it, you weren't the one that signed it, and now you're the held responsible party, you see what the offense is in the matter. And so Jesus teaches not to be careless in these agreements, and that you yourself don't even intend to keep these or have the ability to keep them. So why would you attach my name to it? Don't swear an oath at all. In other words, let it be your word. Someone say, let it be your word. So Jesus says, let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. And I think we pass over that a lot too quickly. It's let your word. Let your word stand for itself. And if it can't stand for itself, then let it sink by itself. If you have not built the integrity to be a trustworthy person, if your word is weightless, that is not a him problem, that's a you problem. It's your own integrity that needs to stand. It's your own word that needs to be able to stand. In fact, Matthew 12, 36 through 37, I don't like this verse, but Jesus says, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give an account for every careless word that they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. So I think we get the picture. I'm looking at my clock. I'm getting close here. So one extra tidbit that I want to slip in here that I don't think it's talked about, but I think is prevalent as we talk about this, is not only do you need to be someone who keeps your promises, and someone who doesn't go carelessly making promises that they can't keep. I think the other part of this that we run into a lot is don't be someone who baits others into making promises that they can't keep with intent to trap them. So this happens a lot. Best example is like used car salesmen, okay? I don't think we have any in the room this morning, so I just talk about them from the side. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like sometimes people aren't intending to enter into agreements or wanting to promise, and we will twist their arm and coerce them into signing their life over to a promise or a vow that, I mean, if they in their own volition wouldn't have wanted to make it in the first place, but we play the bait of Satan, the tempter to them, to cross them over to the other side with intent to entrap someone. And this is, I mean, in a consumeristic society, this happens a lot in corporate America. But I think it's part of what it means to live righteously by keeping your promises and not making promises you can't keep. Don't play the other part of the equation by being the person intentionally trying to trap others by getting them into. It's a form of manipulation, and lots of people like to play that part. So Numbers 23:19 says this, God is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Has he ever spoken and failed to act? Has he ever promised and not carried it out? So some of us, in practice, we don't swear to things, but underneath all of this is a greater issue of integrity, because whether you swear it or not, the point underneath all of this is to be a person of your word. And the reason why is because God is a person of his word. Because God is a God of integrity. God is a God who, as we just read in Numbers, he doesn't speak and then fail to act. He doesn't promise and not fulfill. This is who he is. And you and I, whether we swear by the name or not, we take on the name of Christ. We take on the representation. Paul says we are therefore Christ's ambassadors. So if you've come under the lordship of Jesus Christ, whether you knew you were signing up for that or not, you are a holy priesthood. You are a royal nation. You are a representative of the character of God. So be a person that represents God well by being a person of integrity when it comes to your words. That when you speak something, you fulfill it. And this is just so simple, but a lot of us pass it up. When your words fail, and I just want to pause with that and say that they will. Because what you and I need to remind ourselves of this morning is we are not God. Numbers 23:19 says, God is not a man that he would lie, but you are, and I am. And we are deeply flawed. And even in our best intentions, there are going to be times where with honest intentions, we promise something and we fail to fulfill it. And so when you fail, be honest and own your mistakes. Be honest and own your mistakes. Enter into commitments, but don't bring God into them. But standing on your own word, your own yes, or your own no, there's going to be times where you fail as a human, you fail at life. I fail at life. Have you ever failed at life? I have. And when that happens, own it. Hey, I am genuinely sorry for my mistake. And come to it with compassion. And there's nothing worse than a fake apology. You know what I'm saying? We encounter them daily because we're trying to parent children right now. And it's like, hey, go apologize to your brother. And it's like, I'm sorry. And it's like, Simon's doing this thing lately. I don't know which one of us he picked it up from, but he goes, fine. And he's 2, so it's just really funny to watch him. We're like, don't talk to me like that. Fine. So there's nothing worse than a fake apology, right? Like this is about. Righteousness, again, if we go back to this theme of righteousness, it's about doing righteousness. And so when you fail on your part, when you fail on your word, do right by other people by caring enough to be empathetic for your own failures and what that's cost the other person. That you promised something that you couldn't guarantee, and that has negative consequences on the person that you promised to fulfill that to. And so even if it's a valid reason, like my grandmother passed away or, this medical emergency came up, but I promised you that I would fulfill this, don't just be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. My promise is just not a big deal. That's what was happening that Jesus is addressing here. Instead, own your mistakes. Say, how can I make this up to you? How can I, in my best intentions, I want to fulfill my word, but these are my limitations right now. How can I work with you so that I can do right by you? Does that make sense? So live righteously by keeping your promises and making promises you can't keep. Ephesians 5:1 says this, imitate God, therefore, in everything that you do, because you are his dear children. So why does it matter that we keep our word? Well, because as we already stated, because God is a God who keeps his word. And you and I in Ephesians are called to imitate God, therefore, in everything that we do, because we belong to him, because we are his dear children. And that, my friends, is a sermon in under 30 minutes. 11:58. Promise fulfilled. So I'm going to pray this morning for us. I invite you to stand today. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for, Lord, just what you declare in your word about yourself that we know from experience to be true this morning, that, Lord, you are not a man that you would lie to us. Lord, you are a God who is a promise keeper. Lord, you fulfill your vows, you fulfill your covenants, and Lord, may we in our best intentions, God, imitate you well, be people who live righteously by honoring our word, that we wouldn't, Lord, try to trick or bait or make excuses, but God, we would be people of integrity, that when we speak, let it be yes, yes, or no, no. God, let us not disgrace your character, Lord, by swearing things by your name or things that belong to you that are holy. Lord, to make up for our lack of integrity. Lord, would we just live lives righteously as people of our word, as people of integrity? And Lord, in our failures, would we be graceful to one another this morning, Jesus? Let it be that your name would be kept holy, Lord, and that our light would shine before men, that people would see these good works and know and bring honor and glory to you, our Father in heaven, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen.